Welcome into Point Blank, brought to you by Fitz Roofing. I'm Brandon Strange, joined by ESPN Houston's Joel Blank of the Press Box. Joel, welcome in. It's been a busy news week this week. Obviously, the most shocking news was Daryl Morey's departure from the Houston Rockets. One of the interesting things that came out of that was our own Lance Zierlein tweeting that how the Houston Texans have a new GM candidate in Daryl Morey, and he says, I'm not kidding. Now, he did later qualify that and say that he's not hearing that the Texans are looking at Daryl Morey, but it's an interesting candidate for that job. We've seen this happen between, GMs kind of cross-sport, like from an observational standpoint. What do you think about Daryl Morey as the possible next GM of the Texans?
You know what? I think at first you kind of chuckle and say that's just someone trying to be funny. But when you think about the fact that when Bill O'Brien was let go from both positions, that people were very seriously saying Jeff Luhnow should be considered for the job. And when you look at the history of sports, and there's been plenty of times when a Tony La Russa and a Bobby Knight, or a Brad Stevens and a Bill Parcells, and so many guys that are coaches and friends from other franchises and other sports, they talk. They want to know how you do business. They want to figure out how you do things that maybe they could steal something from that they could use in their sport. And the biggest example was Paul DePodesta, who was with the Boston Red Sox in their analytics department under Theo Epstein. Knew baseball and knew numbers and analytics, became a vice president or general manager with the Cleveland Browns. Now, it didn't end well, but this thing that across the board and where similarities are there salary caps involved? Are there analytics? Are numbers involved? All talent evaluation and things are separate, but people forget that in all these general managers' jobs, your main focus is your bottom line, your salary structure, and the talent you bring in and the analytics you use in which to evaluate it is the hot thing. So from all those things being considered, Brandon, I think it's actually more realistic than people may think, and I think that Daryl Morey is a guy across sports that's highly regarded in analytics, numbers, salary caps, and other things.
I want to talk to you about how the Texans culture would or could embrace Daryl Morey. But before we do that, why don't you give us a word from our video sponsors at Fitz Roofing?
We love the people at Fitz Roofing. They're Houston owned and operated. They're loyal to the people of Houston, and they do their work the right way. Free no obligation inspections for anything you need done on your roof. All you got to do is call 832-521-3001. They come to you, tell you what they can do, and then if you want them to come back, you just call, make an appointment, and they take care of you every step of the way. Best ratings and best warranties in the business. Check them out today. Fitz Roofing, making a difference one home at a time.
Joel, we heard Bill O'Brien talk a lot about, or at least mention, lip service towards analytics and how he had an analytics guy. But at the end of the day, we saw decisions that really went against analytics. But the Texans are in a very unique place now where they've cleaned house with the exception of Easterby. And so now they're in a place where they really can start building something from the ground up. I want to know what your opinion is on whether Cal McNair and the Texans organization would embrace a very analytical approach to rebuilding that team.
Well, I think they should, Brandon, because if you look at the moves Bill O'Brien made, one of the first things he did was get rid of a very well-respected capologist. And that's something that every front office needs because the cap is so vitally important. When you're Bill O'Brien and you're signing Laramie Tunsil to a deal that both parties were very clear on that he wanted to be the highest paid left tackle in football, it didn't mean that he without an agent and you without anybody to report to gave him $6 million more than the former highest paid left tackle. That's a huge mistake, and that's money you can't recoup, and it also will affect then your depth and the other players on your roster. He did way too much in terms of overpaying average or a little bit above average players like Nick Martin, like Kaimi Fairbairn, like all those guys and more. That's why you need cap people and analytics people, because they can tell you the return on investment. They can guesstimate based on years in the league, the age, the numbers, the averages, and it can factor into future success, which is something that you have to measure when you're signing players and bringing in draft picks. So yes, if anybody takes that job, they need to be analytical and or they need to have a capologist associated with them that they're able to bring in. And they also have to have outstanding talent evaluation, because if it's not your strong suit, part of your responsibility is hire those that can do what you can't. So therefore, if you are a person that's basically there to balance the books, keep the salary cap in place, make sure that you make the right deals at the right prices and such like that. You bring in people that can evaluate talent and know the actual sport, the game, and the needs of the team so that you work in harmony for the success of the franchise.
I mean, I think we understand that this is a very unlikely scenario. So we don't want to lead on our viewers here to say that we think this is going to happen, but it's something that's not out of the realm of the possibility. It's something that would actually make sense. I think one of the things that would be interesting, an interesting dynamic, is Daryl staying within the same city, staying within Houston, and he's telling outwardly, publicly, that Daryl, I want to spend time with my kids. And, that's why I'm taking a break away from the game. It would be very interesting if not only did he not take a break, but he actually stayed in the city and was a GM for another pro team here. How do you think that dynamic would work out? And how do you think they would, approach that from a PR standpoint?
Well, I think it's a good story in the fact that people are very, very acclimated and known with in terms of his name, what he brings to the table. I think that honestly, in a lot of ways, Brandon, he may be and bring more to the table and a better solution than who was the previous general manager of the Houston Texans, simply because he's smart, and he's smart enough to know what he knows, and even smarter because he knows what he doesn't know. So he can bring in football minds to do the football part of the equation. He can do what he does best, and that is the salary cap, the analytics, all the breakdowns for the current and the future and going forward to keep the franchise within the realm of competition in terms of salaries, salary structure, and how they go forward from a profitability and a success standpoint. He's smart enough to do all those things. If he can do it without having to move, advantage to everybody involved, because he gets to get to work quicker. He knows how to get to work, and he knows the people that he can lean on in the city, which so many sports teams do when they get situated in their job. There's a reason why Jeff Van Gundy is being considered for a second time as the head coach of the Houston Rockets. He still lives here. He knows a ton about the franchise. He keeps up with them on a daily basis because it's in the news, and he would be a guy that could come right in and not miss a beat and get you moving in the right direction because of his familiarity. Familiarity means something. Daryl Morey, knowing what this franchise has been through, being the Texans, who they've had to deal with, and what that person has done right and wrong and how it's been criticized, can only help him if, and it's a big if, and like I said, like you said, we're just going hypotheticals, but stranger things have happened, and Daryl would at least know all that going into the situation that he was getting himself into.
Now, how do you think that would look from an optics standpoint from the fan base? Like, because we know the struggles that the Rockets have had. Now, obviously, they make the playoffs. They have, I believe, the longest active playoff streak in the league right now. So they make the playoffs a lot. They just haven't reached that pinnacle. And that's kind of the same thing with the Texans, where they've made the playoffs, but they just really haven't been able to take that next step. Do you think fans would have a shorter leash or maybe shorter amount of patience for Daryl Morey, knowing what he has or hasn't accomplished in the NBA?
I think that though the Rockets had shortcomings, the one thing that people liked about Daryl Morey was he always swung for the fences. Sometimes he swung and missed, but other times he had success where everybody else would have failed. No one thought that you could trade Chris Paul's contract, and somehow, some way, Daryl not only did, but got close to equal value in return in Russell Westbrook. Now, Russ might not be the right fit with the offense and James Harden, but Russ, in terms of talent for talent in evaluating both players, was pretty darn close. So Daryl's done a lot of good things. He was the one that gets credit for bringing in James Harden and making the trade with the Thunder and Sam Presti. So at least from the standpoint of a fan base looking at it going, hey, it could be a lot worse. You got a guy that's very savvy. He's not afraid to swing for the fences. He understands analytics and financials. That's a huge step above what you're coming off of with Bill O'Brien. And if he comes out in his first press conference and says, look, I'm going to tell you that everything that I don't know is why I'm going to hire people that do, and hire good football people around him, from player development to college talent scouting, until he can really get his arms around everything, I think that a lot of people might feel a lot more comfortable than you might think in terms of being able to put trust in Daryl, because we forget how much people had in Daryl we trust all over, from their bulletin boards to their memory banks, in terms of believing that no matter what happens, if Daryl can do it, if anybody can do it, Daryl can do it. So I think there would be a lot of fans that might be excited about it.